Good morning and welcome to another edition of Tech Niche Tips. I am your host, Joseph M. Smith, and I'm so excited to have you. And like always, we have another one for you. If this is your first time watching into the show, go ahead and let us know by putting in the number one in the chat. Go ahead, just put the number one. That will let me know that it's your first time here, and we're so excited to have you with us. Thank you so much. I'm seeing some people comment already. We got Mitch in the building. He says, "Hey, Joe." I got Darcel in the building as well. Good morning, fam. Mitch, my first time. It's always his first time. That's why we have this inside joke. He's always coming on for the first time. So thank you so much for rocking with us today. And if you are brand new to the show, I just want to make sure that you can see right below. You could go ahead and subscribe to youtube.com/at Tech Niche Tips. That's youtube.com/at Tech Niche Tips for more. So you get this episode there as well. Again, if this is your first time, go ahead and put number one in the chat. Love to see it here. Long time no see, Darcel says to Mitch. Long time no see. And so this is going to be a conversation, especially for those who are looking to move into an SDR manager position. Mitch is hilarious. The one. Those that are looking to move into an SDR management position, those that are curious about that role, those that are curious about being a leader in your company, this is going to be a great conversation for you. So if you find that anytime, any portion of this conversation, you're just like, hey, I really do like what I'm hearing, share this with somebody else. Somebody else needs to know, right? So go ahead, share this with somebody else and let them benefit from this as well. So right now, I'm not going to delay it any longer. I'm going to bring out our guest. But one thing I want to say before, this show is sponsored by Level Careers. Level Careers is a great place to grow and learn. If you're not familiar with Level Careers, they have tons of different courses and classes that can help you get to the next level. So let's say you are SDR and you want to get to the next level in regards to learning more about what it means to be a closer. You could go to Level Careers and they'll be able to give you some information there. So go to levelcareers.com. In fact, I'll show it real quickly here since I have you on the line. But it's really a great place if you want to learn. And the reason why I say that is because one of the teachers, Kevin Dorsey, if you're not familiar with him, he is a fantastic leader in the sales arena. And he's been doing some great work in regards to the closing course he has here and teaching the benefits and the basics of it. As you can see him right there on the stage. So if you're not familiar with Level Careers, it's actually in the link below. If you're on YouTube, he is the truth. I had him speak to my team at my job, and I can tell you for a fact he is the man. So definitely check out Level Careers if you want to grow more in regards to being a closer, tech sales, as account executive position, or if you want to learn other things in regards to the field. But definitely check that out for yourself. And so without further ado, I want to bring none other to the stage, my new friend, Emanuel. Emanuel, it's so great to have you. How you doing, sir?
Hey, Joe, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
No, absolutely, absolutely. And so right now, I'm going to just say, everybody, if you want to get your notepad out. He is not just a person. In fact, I'm not going to even try to steal your thunder. If you could explain to somebody, give them an elevator pitch of who you are, if you happen to run into somebody in the elevator, what would you describe yourself? I know it's author, but I'm not going to try to steal your thunder. What would you say?
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, so I would say that I've been in sales development for the past 20 years. I spent 13 years as an individual contributor. Most of that time was an SDR, sometime as an AE as well. And then for the past 6.5 to 7 years, I've been leading SDR teams. So either a first line manager or a second line manager, managing managers, working for software companies, outsourced business development firms. And during that time as an SDR or leading SDR teams, I've written a few books on sales development. So that's my background in sales development. I'm also an Air Force veteran, spent 5 years in the military, including some time over in Oman and Saudi Arabia during the Persian Gulf War. And I spent some time in customer service and customer success as well.
Love it, love it. And again, I got to say, salute to you. Thank you for your service. We had a chat before because I have family members that also served as well. So I wanted to say publicly, thank you for your service. And if y'all appreciate our servicemen and women, put thank you in the chat as well. We want to show appreciation to those that are sacrificing daily for our safety. And so let's just take it back to the beginning. So you started off in the military. What made you decide to move into sales, or were there something in between that?
Yeah, so in between the military and sales was I was working for a startup firm in Cleveland, Ohio, where I was primarily responsible for customer service. While I was working at that firm, I was actually going to school at night as well, working to get my bachelor's degree. By the time I got my bachelor's degree, I decided that I wanted to do something else, and I had a degree in marketing. I didn't want to do customer service for the rest of rest of my life. So I leaped into a position where I was actually selling orthopedic shoes and orthotics at healthcare facilities. So I was an AE just selling those products. And I did that for about a year. Then I
Wow.
was recruited by an outsourced business development firm who told me that I could make more money just getting meetings for software companies like Amazon and Salesforce by working for them. So I made that
Ah,
transition to SDR. And I fell in love with that role because I love the idea of just being a hunter and going after meetings and then being done with that process after the meeting was booked and just moving on to the next one. So I fell in love with that role. I got really good at it. I started reading all kinds of books to get better at the role. And so I became kind of an expert in being and doing business development. So being an avid reader and doing those things made me just want to continue and the BDR SDR realm.
I gotta pause here because you just said something very interesting. You said you went back from being a sales rep, basically, an exec, more like an account executive or executive sales rep, to being an SDR. People are like, wait a second, that's reverse. Wait a
Right,
second.
exactly.
I thought it was supposed to be like, hey, the SDR is a stepping stone. I want to move on to being AE. I want to move on to other things, but it was the reverse for you. Can you dive a little bit? I got Gertrude on the line as well on Instagram. What up, Gertrude? Hey, Prince. I want to just give a shout out to my Nigerian folks out there as well. Thank you so much for stopping by the show. I do appreciate it for sure. But I want to just say something real quickly here. What did you and you fell in love with it? Like, can you
Yeah.
speak to that? Because a lot of people are really like, no, this doesn't make sense.
Yeah, well, yeah, I didn't like for one the solution or the service that the product that we were selling was orthopedic shoes. It wasn't the most sexy thing that you could sell in the world, right? And then
Yes.
when I made the transition, this was prior to like all the SaaS companies becoming the big hot thing, right? We didn't have a
Ah,
lot of SaaS organizations. This was like over 20 years ago. So we're looking at like
yeah,
2003, 2004. So to transition from selling that product to doing something a little bit more sexy and software was really intriguing to me. And then the
yeah.
fact of not having to have that quota hanging over my head of having to bring in a certain amount of revenue per year was also exciting for me as well. So that's why I made
Interesting.
that transition, yeah, to being an SDR.
Okay.
And again, of course, like I said, they paid more than the actual closing deals at the time. So
Wow.
it was a natural thing for me to make that transition.
So they paid more for booking meetings and actually closing them at that period of time. I'm like, wow. I'm a little dumbfounded, but of course you have the experience and the knowledge. I'm really kind of curious now. What made you? Okay, so let's continue your story because my mind is racing now. Let's continue with your story. So you got in the SDR role. You're making good money. What happened next?
So I stayed in that role for so long. So I worked for about, I would say, five different companies, just being
Wow.
an SDR at different organizations. Half of that time was like working for outsourced business development firms where we would prospect on behalf of known brands like Amazon, Salesforce, Wolters Kluwer,
Oh,
VMware. So you get all that experience of prospecting on behalf of those organizations, which was
yeah.
fantastic. And then I eventually made the transition to actually working for those types of organizations directly. And so when I
Mm,
made that transition of working for software companies, that was a relief because now I didn't have 5 to 6 accounts that I had to manage. I just had that one value prop that I had to worry about, prospecting on behalf of our company, booking meetings for our AEs. And I loved making that transition from being an outsourced BDR to working directly for those organizations.
And you know what's so funny? Now it feels like it's like a coming back in circle motion where now fractional SDR is the new rave.
Yeah,
So
yeah, you're
so
right.
It's interesting how things change. Listen, y'all, this is gonna be an amazing conversation. It's amazing already. I want you to go and put your comments and questions down in the chat now because we are gonna have a Q&A, and that includes you, Instagram. We are gonna have a Q&A with Emmanuel, and he's gonna share, or ER, I should say, and he's gonna share or answer your questions, I should say. And if you have any questions as the conversation flows, put them down, and I'll go back to them when we have the Q&A, and feel free to just do that as well. If you want, I'm going to also drop a link on YouTube specifically where you could call into the show and ask Emmanuel your questions directly. So be aware of that. That's going to happen probably about in the next, 18 minutes or so. So get your
Nice.
questions ready, put it down, and we're going to have a very intriguing conversation. So listen, you've 20 years, you've seen a lot. You've
I've
seen a
seen a
lot
lot.
more
Yes,
more than
absolutely.
anybody else. So you're being an SDR. You had to, of course, in your time there, you had to experience some amazing highs and lows. Can you talk about when you made that shift to actually work for the company? What were the experiences like versus outsourcing?
Yeah, I think one of the main differences was, like I said, when you're working for an outsourced business development firm, you're constantly on different accounts. There was a time where I was actually working on behalf of 6 different accounts at a time. So week 1, I'm prospecting on behalf of someone like an Amazon. Week 2,
Wow.
I'm prospecting on behalf of some no-name brand that you've probably never heard of that I'm reaching out to prospects on. Then week 3, it's a different company. It's always something different,
Yeah.
different verticals as well. Some are software, some are fintech, some are finance. A little, everything's a little bit different.
Yeah.
So it's that constant shift, and that's okay if you like that constant change and you don't want to get stagnant and using the same value prop, reaching out to the same people over and over again. It's great for people who want to do that, and then you gain a lot of experience a lot faster when you're working for an outsourced type of agency. But for me, what I really enjoyed about working for the actual organization was that, one, you get inbound leads when you're working for the organization. So you're hand in hand working with marketing. They're providing you marketing qualified leads. You usually don't get that when you're working for an outsourced business development firm. Two, you establish a better relationship with the sellers at the organization, so
Mm-hmm.
that you learn from them when you're on those discovery calls, and then you collaborate with them and strategize on targeted accounts to pursue. You
Yeah.
really don't get to do that when you're working for an outsourced business development firm. A lot of times, when I was working for outsourced business development firms, they really didn't care for those firms.
Yeah.
They didn't really even want to take the meetings that we set up for them. So
Mm-hmm.
total difference when you're actually working for the organization. So being a
Mm-hmm.
part of the organization made a big difference versus working for an outsourced business development firm. Yeah.
Yeah, and I want to piggyback on that by giving a shout out to Glen Coco. They kind of do that right now, where it's like the Uber of SDR work, where you could sign up for it for free. You could basically start prospecting even right now, set at your own hours, but of course it has to be business hours depending on where you are time zone wise. So I'm going to
Mhm.
give a shout out to Glen Coco. If you're interested in that, definitely reach out to me. In fact, put Glen Coco in the chat if you're interested in working for that. I know people that have been doing it for over a year, making good money working on Glen Coco. So let me know if that's something you are interested in. And I'll definitely send you some resources. Oh, we got Operation Tech Takeover in the building. We have Operation Tech Takeover in the building. And so I'm glad that you are here with me, here with us as well, brother. Thank you so much for rocking with us. Listen, so now that you're working for the company, you got to the company now. What were obviously there's difference in the experience. You just explained that as well, very
Mhm.
very eloquently. What were some of the things that, let me put it like this, in regards to the next trajectory? You were working the SDR role. Was there like, okay, I want to be a sales manager, or was it like, you know what, let me try the AE role, let me see which path I would prefer?
Yeah, you know what? Back in the old days, there really was no such thing as an SDR manager. It's really a fairly new position. So when you're working
Mm,
for an outsourced business development firm, I mean, honestly, it's kind of dead end when you're working for an outsourced business development firm. There's really no AE position to get promoted into.
yeah.
There's things like you could do account management, like if you have a lot of accounts and you need someone to manage those accounts, you could do that with at outsourced business development firms back then. I'm sure a lot of things have changed since I worked for a business development firm. Like maybe
Yes.
now they have AE and SDR manager positions. Some do actually that I know of. So that
Yeah.
was the major difference. So back then, SDRs would report either directly to the VP of marketing or the VP of sales. There was no middle ground of SDR manager until SaaS really exploded and started hiring all these BDRs and SDRs. And so they started to hire these SDR manager roles. So
Yeah.
working at organizations that like software companies, they have those positions where you can get promoted to an AE or get promoted to an SDR manager or even do something outside of sales and marketing. I've seen people go from SDR to customer support, SDR to like sales engineer. There's so many avenues
Mm-hmm.
that people take outside of the traditional AE or SDR manager role when they're working for those organizations. So that's another advantage of working directly for the company as opposed to working for an outsourced firm. Yeah.
Yeah, and I want to pause here by saying thank you to Mitch for the questions that he has in the chat. Definitely, I see it. Hey, Mini Meows, and we got Nigel in the building. He also is a sponsor of this actual stream as well. His course, Learnful, is his baby, and they basically are everything pre-sales as well. They do a highly, how I put it, intense cohort that they have, but you have so much support with them. So if you're interested in learning more about Learnful, definitely look at the description below here on YouTube. There's going to be some links there as well. One of them leads you to Learnful. So definitely check that out if you are interested in learning more about Learnful. And so, yeah, in regards to you, again, you've seen a lot in your 20 plus years of experience. Let's talk about, there's highs, right, in being
Yeah.
in being the SDR role, but what are the lows that some might experience, or even you have experienced?
Yeah, I think so. Some of the highs are one of my first roles as an SDR. I booked a meeting for an organization and they closed the deal for $2 million. That was like one of the
Wow.
highs working for an organization.
You
Another
said $2 million.
$2
Let's
million, right?
let's clap it up. Let's clap it up for
So
that.
yeah, so that was high for them, but it wasn't high for me because SDRs only get,
Yeah.
back then we would get like a gift card or something, right? Hey, great job setting up that meeting. Here's a gift card for you, right? It would have been a lot better if I got a percentage of that deal, right?
Like
But
the AE. The
we
AE
weren't
probably was
getting
like
that
living it.
right back then. Yeah. So that was a high. Another high was a time where I actually cold called Tim Cook at Apple and I
Wow.
got him on the line and I booked a meeting with him. He was super nice guy. And the meeting went really well for that organization as well. That's something that I always talk about, booking that meeting with Tim Cook, who's of
Wow.
course now he's the CEO of Apple. At the time he was the COO, and I had tried to reach out to Steve Jobs at the time, but his admin wouldn't put me through. So I used the dial by name directory to find Tim Cook because he was next
Ooh.
on my list, and I got Tim Cook on the line. So that's another high. And then I think just when you're like really doing well, there's times where I've been able to like build on the momentum and book like 7 or 8 meetings in a day because
Wow.
you're really doing really well and the momentum is going well. Some of the lows, though, I would say there are times where you have those droughts where you can go 2 3 weeks without booking a meeting at all. That can definitely be a low. You of course you're cold calling people, so not everyone is friendly. Some people are
Yeah.
mean, so that can be a low as well when they're telling you to beat it or get lost. That can
Mm-hmm.
be a low. And then you kind of like you kind of drag a little bit when things aren't going well because
Yeah.
things aren't just clicking on all cylinders. Emails not working, phone calls not working. That can be a low. And finally, I would say when people are looking to do something else outside of the SDR role,
Yeah.
sometimes if there's not an open position, you can be in that role for like 2 to 3 years because there's nothing available. And so
Mm.
that can be, detrimental to your career as well. So those are some
Yeah.
of the highs and lows. Yeah.
Yeah, there's so much that was said there. I'm going to remind the audience, y'all, Q&A is coming up, so definitely put your questions either on Instagram or put it on LinkedIn and YouTube. I'm going to bring it up for us to kind of tackle during Q&A, but I just wanted to make sure that I remind everybody of that. You're right. That big $2 million deal, unfortunately, we don't get a percentage of that. I saw
Hmm.
somebody in the chat, Mitch actually said gift card, shake my head. He works in data science. So he's like, what? That's what y'all get for a $2 million deal? It's true. But things have changed. I talked to somebody else who used to
Yeah.
be in a selling role. He said back in the day, man, we as SDRs we usually get a like crumbs basically like compared to what you guys get now. So the
Right.
times have changed. It increased as well. What up, Daniel? Got Daniel here on IG. Things have changed for sure. So that is something that I just want to kind of piggyback on what you said is that things have
Yeah.
changed. But there are some hard times, and I'm not gonna lie. Right now is a hard time for a lot of people because of the topic that we talked about prior to the show, which is layoffs.
Yeah.
You experienced it yourself. I've experienced it. Mine was kind of weird because I kind of got the job already. I told them I was gonna leave, but I'll stay on until you find somebody else. And they say, hey, we gotta lay you off. So I was like, okay, I got something. I told you, but
Right.
it happens, right? It happens in our lives, and so I just want to kind of talk about your experiences going through layoffs and how did you bounce back?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the major layoffs for me was when the pandemic started during COVID, and the software company I was working for laid off the majority of the SDR team, and so that was, that was a downer for me. But the good news is that I have a really strong network on LinkedIn, like over 13,000 connections. So I was
Yeah,
able to post on LinkedIn my experience of really just, and I just stayed positive about the fact that I worked for this organization for a year. I was really grateful for the opportunity. I wasn't negative about the layoff. And then as a
yeah.
result of that, a lot of my colleagues and connections shared my post, and that ended up landing on the right desk, and someone reached out to me about a position where I ended up taking a role 30 days later after that layoff. So I was super grateful
Mm,
for that. So that was back then. And then a few years later, I was in a position at a publicly traded company. I was managing managers. And again, because of macroeconomic conditions, they decided to do away with the SDR team, the SDR function. So a good over 100 people were laid off at that organization. And then the final time that I was laid off, I was only at this organization for 2 months. The first day that I
wow,
started with this organization, they informed me that they had just laid off a bunch of people on that day, including, I would say,
wow.
about 20% of the people that I was supposed to lead. So I was like, oh man, what did I get myself into? Right.
Oh, jeez,
And then
yeah.
just 60 days later, they announced to me that, guess what? We're going to be laying off more people, and you're included in this round of layoffs. I'm like, after 60 days, I haven't even
Jeez.
had a chance to prove myself, right? And so
Yeah.
that gave me kind of like the PTSD, because now you start to recognize what's going to happen right before a layoff. You get that calendar invite from a manager that says quick meeting and no agenda or anything like that. And so you start to do your detective work.
Wow.
And so I started looking at their calendar on like Gmail and figuring out who else are they reaching out to for quick meeting. And you see that they've got
Wow.
20 different quick meetings on their calendar, and they're all on your team. And so you start to put two and two together and say, okay, now they're about to do another round of layoffs. And so that has always given me PTSD. Now when I get that calendar invite with no agenda from a manager that says quick meeting or quick chat, I'm thinking, oh crap, are we going through this again? Are we going to go through another round of layoffs, or is this something else? Right.
Oh,
So yeah,
oh man.
it's
Oh
crazy.
man, that's tough. But I'm glad that you bounced back. You said an amazing thing just now. Your network really is your net worth.
Yeah.
I've actually gotten a new job because of building a brand and having a network that was extensive. People that I didn't connect with when I needed them. People I connected with in general, And so I think that definitely needs to be encouraged. And one of the things I would love to kind of go back to, we talked about earlier. You're an author of not just
Hmm.
one but two Amazon best-selling books, or I believe it's one or two,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You
You're
just
right.
listened to the book, and so that's pretty awesome to see. I would love for you to talk about the book that you have first released, and then after you talk about the second book, it kind of will lead into the question that I had, which is how to become an SDR manager that everybody wants to follow. But let's talk about
Yeah.
the books first.
Oh, absolutely. So I would say the latest book is called Now That's How You Build Hella Sales Pipeline. It's
Mm,
primarily for individual contributors who are looking for additional ways and ideas on getting people to agree to meetings and and build that pipeline with them using AI, using different techniques like going after closed loss lists, finding people who used to work for your existing customer and now they moved on to other organizations, leveraging your
Yes.
network and doing things like that. So it teaches techniques like that. That's the latest book that's on the market today. And when it was released, it was on the new release bestseller list in that category. And it's
Mm,
funny because the way that I created this book was I did an Indiegogo campaign and I had people pre-order the book through crowdfunding. And so
yeah.
because of that, it had a lot of success. So that first week it
Smart.
was on the bestseller list for new releases. And then a couple of years ago is when I released Now That's How You Lead SDR teams. And
Mm-hmm.
so that was my book strictly for SDR managers. It teaches you the 16 hats you must wear to be a successful SDR manager. The
Mm,
the main points that I bring out is that you have to be a motivator. You have to be able to motivate SDRs because there's highs and lows of that job, and not everyone's going to be
yeah.
successful all the time. So you have to find ways to motivate them, find ways to have fun in the company. Um, you have to be able to train SDRs. You have to be able to coach them. You have to have a really thorough inspection process. So don't just
Mm,
assume that people are doing what you told them to do, but you have to go in and read the emails, see if they're responding to prospects, listen to recorded phone calls, and make sure that they're saying the right things to gatekeepers and to those key players that they need to book meetings with. And then you have to be willing to lead from the front, so that
mm,
means making calls with your team. Don't just tell them what to do, but show them how to do it. Get on calls with them, book meetings with them, and then when you book meetings, gift it to the SDRs because chances are the SDRs are getting commission on meetings and you're not. So when you
yeah.
gift it to them and then when you leave from the front, you earn mad respect from the SDRs because you're not just relying on techniques and tools that you used several years ago that don't work anymore. You're actually showing them how it can be done today in modern society.
You know what? I love that, and that's actually I consider that almost like an old school approach to it, and not in a bad way. I remember when I used to work in solar sales, right, inside solar sales, and we used to be on the floor, and I'm talking about like Wolf of Wall Street environment, loud music
Hmm.
blasting. We got managers on hoverboards. Always
Yes.
one manager who's like dial, dial, dial. The crazy environment, right?
Yes.
But we used to see that sometimes like the top guys will come in, even some of the managers or supervisors would come in and be like, "How's it going? Everything's going well?" And they would sit down and they would go through it and they would book and basically like, "Hey, good job." Like, but you booked. Like, no, it's yours. And that helped their team to be like, "Hey, I want to work for this guy because he can not only tell me what to do, but he could show me what to do and allow me." Or him or her, excuse me, and allow
Yeah.
me to grow because now I have it by example. But technology has
Exactly.
changed now. We have Gong. We have other tools that you can
Right.
literally historically listen to calls and listen to how your managers used to do it. So they might be like, "Hey, listen to this," instead of
Exactly.
actually jumping on the call with you.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So listen, y'all, we are about to jump into Q&A right now. There's questions in the chat that you could definitely thank you, Mitch. He definitely submitted a lot of questions. And I would love to hear that as well. We got tech coach Ralph in the building. Stop trying to show some love. Appreciate it, man. Thank you so much, tech coach Ralph. He is in the building. Friend of the show. Also, he stops on often on the other show we have Monday mornings, which is called Talk That Tech with Trey and myself, Tech Bag Trey, and we talk about different events, current events that are happening in the tech industry, and it's a lot of fun. And he's often on there as a guest. So thank you so much for stopping by. Definitely appreciate you doing it. And so right now it's that time. It's that time of the day where we go to our live Q&A. And so if you are available with any questions, Instagram included, LinkedIn, you don't got to be quiet. Go ahead and let us know. We'll answer your questions right now in the chat. So yes, it's Q&A time.
Great.
First one I have up here is a few by Mitch as you were talking, and that I really appreciate. So thank you, Mitch. He says, "How would you help a struggling STR BDR that's that has potential, but just afraid of making the call or they're scared of rejection?"
That's a good question. And I've seen this before. I've seen SDRs that have call reluctance, or they're just
Hmm.
afraid to make calls and they want to send
Yes.
emails all day. What I've done in those situations is I would help them by telling them to make incremental gains. So what I mean is, if the goal is to make 50 dials per day, I would start them off with like 5 dials per day. Let's just make 5 dials, see how that works for you. I would actually also remind them that the most likely outcome of a cold call is you're going to get someone's voicemail. So you shouldn't be afraid to leave 5 voicemails in a day. It's very rare that people answer the phone anyway. So let's go ahead and make those dials. And then I would also show them the recordings of people that have made dials before, to let them know that, one, yeah, you may have some success, but also you may fail, and it's okay to fail. That's
Yeah.
just part of the job. You really only need to, if you can get 10% of your list to agree to a meeting, then you're killing it. So don't worry about failing. It's just part of the job. Those are the things that I would probably tell them. And then I would create, if they're like really afraid to make a dial because they're afraid of rejection, I would reward them just for having conversations. So if they have conversations, and if they get, what I used to do is that I would tell people that, I'll tell you this: if you get 10 rejections in a row, then I'll make sure that you get a cash prize, like $100 or something, right? And they would never get 10 rejections in a row because, they've been trained well to present a nice value prop, overcome objections. And they may get 2 or 3 rejections, but then that fourth person is going to say yes to a meeting. And so they never earned that $100 cash prize. So just showing them those types of things usually helps them to overcome the call reluctance, when I'm coaching SDRs.
Awesome. Awesome. Love that. He also had another question as well. We have a couple questions from him. So listen, y'all, if you have any questions, go ahead and put it in the chat and I'll post it up here. Instagram, I'll read your question from there. But he also mentioned, if I wanted to be an SDR manager, um, as an SDR, what are some things I may need to excel in my current role to become that manager?
That is a good question. I think first and foremost, you have to kill it as an SDR. That means you have to do things that get recognized, being top of the leaderboard, most meetings, most pipeline, most SDR source revenue. So when you're at the top of your game, you get recognized within the organization. So that's the first thing. The second thing that you have to do is you have to show that you can do the job. The one way that you can do that is that you can coach without having that official title of being a coach, or a team leader, or anything like that. So when you recognize that your team members are struggling, you can walk them through what's successful. I used to have an SDR that would just do what we call reviewing game tape. He would gather up the rest of the team. He was just a SDR. He wasn't a manager or a team lead. He would go in and listen to gong calls, and then they would evaluate how those gong calls are going. He was just showing his leadership by doing that. And then he would share when he was successful with SDRs as well. When I was just an SDR as well, I would be that person. And it's not just an SDR, as actually when I was an SDR, but when I was an SDR and not a leader, I would I would often be the person that they would sit the new people next to, and because of that, they would ask me all types of questions, and so I kind of got tired of that, and so I started to develop a system of just upfront putting information in place for those SDRs to get better. And then if they had questions after that, they would reach out to me. And that was actually effective in organizations recognizing my leadership. And so they actually appointed me to like team leadership roles when I was an SDR. So that's it. Just being at the top of your game, leading without necessarily having that
Mm,
title, and then making sure that you advertise that, letting your manager know, hey, not only did I do well myself, but I brought up my team as well by coaching them.
love it. Love it. What do they say? Do the job to get the job.
Do the
So,
job to get the job. That's right.
do the job to get the job. So we got another question from Mitch as well. He says, in your opinion, what are the main responsibilities of an SDR manager? You touched on this a little bit, but if you wanted to kind of
Yeah.
sum it up, I know you talk about leading from the front. You also
Yeah.
talk about empathy as well.
Yeah.
What would you be your response to this?
The main job of an SDR leader really is to make sure that you hit your pipeline goal. That's the bottom line. In order to do
Hmm.
that, the SDRs have to book meetings. They have to book meetings that convert to pipeline or opportunities. That's the main job of an SDR manager. Now, to get there, you have to be able to motivate your team, and you have to be able to look at data and understand and translate that data to actionable items. Like if you notice that the goal is $50 per day and someone's making $30 per day and they're not hitting the goal, where you need to action that information to determine why they aren't making $50 per day and how can you help them to get to $50 a day. Or if you've got a rep on your team who is hitting goal and they're making fewer dials or sending fewer emails or LinkedIn messages, you need to understand why that is it because they're doing things like upfront research, and they're being very personable, very relevant in their outreach? Or are they using any type of intent signals to reach out to those folks? You need to be able to understand what success looks like, so you can duplicate that with the rest of the team. And then you need to be able to motivate your team to continue to want to do that role. I think that's probably the primary responsibilities. And of course, coaching goes along with the territory. You have to be able to effectively leverage your one on one time with your SDRs. I usually do 30 to 45 minutes per week when I'm managing individual contributors. And then I also do at least one stand up meeting with the team once a week for 30 to 45 minutes where everyone's talking about their win stories. We're talking about what's happening within the organization. We're talking about what it takes to be successful, and we'll do things like call review and looking at emails together to determine what's been successful. I think if you're doing all those things, you can be a successful SDR manager.
Really good stuff. Really good stuff here. Listen, you know what MO is, right? We're getting close to the time. I know Mitch was supplying a lot of questions, so I appreciate it. But listen, I don't keep my guests longer than they need to be on. So if y'all don't have any more questions after this one, I'm gonna just probably ask one more question, or I'm gonna let Manuel or ER go. So listen, you've been warned. Go ahead and put your questions in now before we go. All right, but I got the final question from Mitch. He says, how did you stay positive during those layoff periods, or did you? We are all human.
Yeah, I would say I did stay positive, but the reason I stayed positive was one of the things that I did was I posted funny post on LinkedIn related to my job search. So, for example, the last time I got laid off, it was during Oscars, NBA, All Star Game, Super Bowl time, right? So
Hmm.
I would post information about the Super Bowl, and I would say if you're looking for the Bill Belichick of SDR leadership, then you need to reach out to me. And then I would post my facts. Here's why I'm the best SDR manager available. And I will list all the things that I've done positively as an SDR manager. So being able to stay relevant and funny on LinkedIn was super helpful. And then just talking to other people, my colleagues and peers, to find out what's trending, what they're doing to be successful, staying positive that way. And then doing things like just going to work out. I was working out with a personal trainer, keeping myself healthy, talking to my family, still having fun with my family, shooting pool and playing ping pong and things like that. Realizing that a job is just a job. It's not, it's not the end of the world if I'm not working today. Eventually, I know that
Mm.
I'm going to be working eventually, and then, of course, relying on faith as well. One of the things I always tell everyone is that where man puts a period, God puts a comma. So just
Amen.
because man says your job is ended, it doesn't mean that's the end of you. And there's ways for you to get back on the horse and start to work again. You just have to be positive about it. You have to leverage your network, and then you have to do what it takes to get the next role. And a lot of times when I got laid off, I ended up getting a role that was either a higher level role or it paid more than the job that I was laid off from. So that kept me motivated, knowing that it's not the end of everything.
That's right. It is not the end of everything. And we have Daniel on the line. What up, Daniel? Good to see my New Jerseyan native here as well. Definitely appreciate you for stopping by. But that's absolutely true. It does not have to be the end for sure. Um, it does not have to be the end for sure. And I think that that's something that we need to highlight. I want to actually kind of take a step back too and talk about something that hasn't been mentioned. But when you were going through layoffs, you obviously learned some things that you didn't like about that role and that job, and you said, "Okay, I'm gonna look for these signs in the next company that I am going to evaluate." Because again, it's a two-way. When you go into the interview, it's a two-way street. You're evaluating them; they're evaluating you. So,
Hmm.
what would you say are the red flags people should avoid when they are looking at a company to be an SDR at, or any company in general?
Yeah, I think one of the main red flags is that you need to pay attention when people tell you information on Glassdoor. They're reviewing their company. Pay attention to that, because sometimes you figure, well, they're probably just disgruntled. Maybe they got fired or something, and I'm not going to pay attention to that, or that happened a long time ago. But people were telling on Glassdoor, the last company I was laid off from, that hey, this company has multiple rounds of layoffs. They practice age discrimination. They have a toxic work environment, and I just ignored all that, where I should have paid attention to that and said, well, I'm not even going to be bothered with this organization. You can do Google searches on organizations as well. Google the name of the company and Google layoffs. See if they're having multiple rounds of layoffs. See if you can connect with people that work with the organization and people who used to work for the organization. Find out what the culture is like before you make a decision to work for that organization. If you do those things, then you can protect yourself from having to experience the next round of layoffs at an organization.
Love it for sure. I was looking at the question comment we have from Daniel. Thank you so much. He said, "Praise God, awesome episode, brother Joe and Emmanuel. Definitely appreciate it, Daniel. And I need to get you on the show. The work that you're doing is amazing as well. It needs to be highlighted. So we got to work that out for sure.
Thanks,
Definitely wanted
Daniel.
to do that. But yeah, no, I definitely appreciate this. This has been a great episode. Thank you everybody for taking the time to, of course, join us. As I mentioned before, we do have a couple of sponsors for the show. We have First Level Careers. Kevin Dorsey actually is one of the teachers there. If you don't know Kevin Dorsey, look him up.
Katie's
So there's a
awesome.
lot of
Katie's awesome.
Katie is that guy, and I from personal conversations with him speaking to my team, I can verify. Like we left that conversation, everybody on my team was losing their minds. Like we got to do this, we got to do that. Like everybody was like so motivated to go out and hunt. And so that's Level Careers. We talked to Learnful. Nigel, who actually is a founder of Learnful, stopped by just now on Instagram, and he is doing amazing work there. So definitely check out Learnful. And last but not least, the thing that got me actually into course careers, into tech, was course careers. And the reason why I promote course careers is because of my personal experience. I was transitioning from another industry altogether. They gave me the language and the ability to do it. And of course, what I would always preface is that you need more. So they decided to bring more. They have coaches now for students. So if you're ever interested in any of the courses that they have, there's a few of them from technology sales, accounting, data analytics, and more. You could go ahead and go to the link in my description on YouTube, and you can see the success stories. I was one of them as well. There's so many success stories of people that have gone through this course and then be able to come out the other side. But I would tell you right now, you're not going to be able to do it alone. You need a community. So even though you do the course, do it in community. Find somebody, whether it's a coach or somebody you're doing along with, so that you guys could push each other to the other side. And so right now, I just want to thank you to all the sponsors, and especially Emmanuel for taking the time to be on the show. I definitely appreciate your time. So thank you.
Absolutely my pleasure. Thanks a lot, Joe. Appreciate it.
No problem. And family, like I always say, until next time, I hope to see you on the other side. Take care.